Good afternoon, my Lions family. Go ahead and drop a like to show some love and share this with the Blue and Silver Nation, because today's topic is a big one. There's a lot going on in Detroit, and you need to be in the loop. So get comfortable, because now, let's get into it. The CJ Gardner Johnson conversation has sparked back to life, and whether you like it or not, it's a topic Detroit can't ignore. This isn't about clickbait or controversy for the sake of views. It's about facing the reality of what's happening in the Lions' secondary and how names from the past keep circling back when the depth chart starts to crumble. CJ Gardner Johnson is once again a free agent, and like it or not, his name is floating around the Lions community once again. When the Lions first signed him back in the 2023 offseason, it felt like a statement. It was before Brian Branch became the young star we now know, before his rise as one of the most instinctive defenders in Detroit's secondary. Back then, the Lions needed swagger, energy, and attitude, and CJ brought that in spades. He was electric, he made headlines, and he made fans run to Amazon to buy blue ski masks until the shelves were empty. That's how contagious his presence was. You can hate his talk, but you can't deny his spark. Of course, things didn't go as planned. The injury hit early, and everything changed. By the time he came back, he wasn't the same. The fire was still there, but it burned in a different way. His stint in Detroit ended as quickly as it began. He bounced from team to team, from the Eagles back to us, then out again, then to Houston, then to Baltimore's practice squad, and now released again. That's the headline that reignited this debate. The Ravens released Gardner Johnson after what was described as a mutual decision between the team and his agent, Kevin Connor. Baltimore had just traded for another safety, which closed off CJ's path to playing time. The Ravens fans themselves seemed confused by the move in the first place. They didn't quite understand why they brought him in, and just like that, he was gone. Now he's sitting in free agency once again, and the question is obvious. Would Detroit ever consider bringing him back? Most Lions fans say absolutely not. In fact, if you scroll through the threads and comment sections, you'll see a pretty unanimous 95 to 99% no way. And honestly, I get it. It feels like moving backward. It feels like reopening a door that should stay closed. But here's where things get interesting. Brad Holmes, the same general manager who was so thrilled to sign him in 2023 that he literally woke his kids up with the news, is still running the show. And this is the same Brad Holmes who has proven he's not afraid to surprise everyone if he thinks it helps this football team. You've got to remember the situation the Lions are in right now. This secondary is beaten up. Kirby Joseph is nursing an injury.
Brian Branch, arguably the most exciting young piece on this defense, is suspended. You can't play a full NFL season without expecting injuries, and we're already there. Dan Campbell and Brad Holmes are in the attrition business now. They know the grind. Every roster move from here on out is about survival and keeping this Super Bowl caliber run alive. Here's where it gets a little suspicious. The Lions did release a safety earlier today, and as of now, there's no corresponding move to replace him. They brought back a few players to the practice squad, sure, but no one has stepped into that empty roster spot yet. So naturally, fans start connecting dots. Could it mean something? Could there be quiet conversations happening behind the scenes about a reunion? Let's be clear, no one's saying this is definitely happening. Even the people talking about it know it's a long shot. But when you combine the timing, the roster situation, and the fact that Gardner Johnson just put out a public thank you message to all his former teams, it feels like something's brewing. That statement wasn't random. That was optics. It was a move from his camp to remind teams, including Detroit, that he's still here, still hungry, still claiming to have learned and grown from every stop along the way. And if you read between the lines, that message almost sounds like he's ready to ask for one more chance. Like he's humbling himself a little, which is not something CJ Gardner Johnson has been known for. The same guy who used to light up social media and call out opponents is now posting long gratitude notes about growth and maturity. That's not nothing. It might not mean he's changed, but it definitely means he knows his career is at a crossroads. So the question now becomes, would Detroit even consider it? Would Dan Campbell and Brad Holmes, two men who value character and locker room culture more than almost anyone in football, be willing to bring that kind of personality back into the mix? Or would it send the wrong message to a team that's worked so hard to build chemistry and discipline in the locker room? That's where I'll leave it for now, because this is where things start to get complicated. If you're Brad Holmes and your defense is down to its last healthy bodies, do you stick to your principles, or do you take a risk on a guy who once brought your entire fan base together behind a blue ski mask? What do you think, Lions fans? Would you take the risk and bring CJ Gardner Johnson back, or should Detroit move forward without looking back? Let's be real, this is one of those situations where logic and emotion are at war. On paper, bringing CJ Gardner Johnson back doesn't make sense. He's bounced from team to team, his production has dipped, and his reputation hasn't exactly improved. But emotionally, you remember what that energy felt like in Detroit. You remember the chaos, the swagger, the noise. He brought something to that locker room and to the fan base that nobody else has been able to replicate since. That ski mask movement wasn't just a gimmick. It was a symbol of belief. It was confidence, toughness, identity, all things that fit perfectly with Dan Campbell's message at the time. But timing matters, and right now the Lions are in a very different place than they were in 2023. Back then, they were the underdog trying to prove they belonged. Now, they're contenders. They've got expectations. They've built something real, something sustainable, and the last thing they need is a personality that could disrupt the chemistry that's gotten them this far. That's where the hesitation comes in, because while CJ's energy once fueled the locker room, it could also ignite the wrong kind of fire this time around. Still, it's hard not to at least think about it when you look at the state of this secondary. Brian Branch, your most dynamic playmaker in coverage, is sidelined. Kirby Joseph is hurt and fighting to recover. Emmanuel Mosley and Carlton Davis are both out. You've got depth players being forced into starting roles and corners playing out of position. It's desperation mode, and desperation does strange things to rosters in October. Brad Holmes has already proven that he's not above making unconventional moves when the team's depth is tested. Remember last year when nobody, absolutely nobody, thought CJ Moore would ever wear Honolulu blue again after that suspension? Guess who brought him back? Holmes did. That move shocked everyone because it didn't fit the culture-first narrative that fans have attached to the front office. But that's the thing. Holmes isn't stubborn about second chances. If he believes a player can help this team win, he's at least willing to listen. And that's why, even though most of us think this reunion is a long shot, you can't completely rule it out. There's history. There's familiarity. Campbell knows exactly what CJ brings, both good and bad. Brad Holmes knows what it felt like to land him the first time. And both of them know this team is dangerously thin in the secondary right now. If they believe that his fire could help fuel another playoff push, they might just pick up the phone. Now, let's not get it twisted. This wouldn't be a feel-good reunion. This would be business, purely about football. It would be about bodies, depth, survival. No one's rolling out the red carpet or handing him a hero's welcome. He'd have to come in, keep quiet, and prove that he still wants to play for something bigger than himself. That's the only way a move like this would work in Detroit's current locker room. And to CJ's credit, that statement he put out after being released from Baltimore sounded like a man who understands that. It wasn't his usual brash talk. It was reflective, almost humbled, talking about growth, gratitude, and learning from past experiences. Maybe that's just PR. Maybe it's genuine. Either way, it shows that he knows how his situation looks from the outside. He's running out of chances, and he knows it. But this is the NFL, where desperation and opportunity collide all the time. We've seen players fall from grace and find redemption in places no one expected. And if there's one front office that's built its reputation on taking players the rest of the league gave up on and turning them into contributors, it's Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell's Lions. So maybe, just maybe, there's a world where the Lions bring him in on a short-term deal, not as a star, not as a voice, just as depth. A veteran body who knows the system, who knows the expectations, and who can fill a gap for a few weeks while the roster heals. Maybe that's all it would take. But that's where it gets risky, because CJ doesn't come quietly. He never has. Even when he's not trying to be the center of attention, he finds a way to make headlines. And for a team that's finally got national respect and stability, that kind of energy could be a problem. The Lions are finally seen as disciplined, focused, and united, everything they weren't a few years ago. So do you risk shaking that image just to fill a spot on the depth chart? There's no easy answer here. You can see both sides clearly. On one hand, you need bodies in the secondary, and CJ is talented enough to help. On the other, you've built something too special to jeopardize it for a quick fix. The decision would say a lot about where Brad Holmes believes this team truly stands, whether he sees the Lions as desperate for help or confident enough to stay the course with what they have. And that's where I want to leave it with you. If it came down to this, if Detroit's injuries pile up and the free agent market starts to dry, would you be okay with bringing CJ Gardner Johnson back one more time? Or should this team stick to the standard it's built and keep moving forward without looking in the rearview mirror? Drop your thoughts in the comments, hit that like button, and make sure you're subscribed, because this story isn't over. The Lions' secondary situation is changing by the day, and if anything happens, we'll be right here breaking it down. See you in the next one, and as always, go Lions! Because here's the thing, every great team reaches that moment when tough decisions define its identity. For Detroit, that moment might be arriving right now. You can feel the pressure building. The front office knows the window is open. The fans know it too. This isn't the time to play it safe. it's the time to do whatever it takes to keep this run alive. And sometimes, that means revisiting names that come with baggage, even if they make people uncomfortable. Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell have never been afraid of bold moves. Remember, this team was built on taking chances that others wouldn't. They believed in Jared Goff when the rest of the league called him washed. They doubled down on young players when everyone said they needed veterans. They've always trusted their process and their ability to shape people, not just players. That's what makes the Lions culture different. It's not about perfection. It's about growth, grit, and second chances. That's why the CJ Gardner Johnson question is so fascinating. Because if there's one organization that could handle a personality like his, it might just be Detroit. The locker room is strong enough now. The leadership core, Goff, Amonare, Sewell, Hutchinson, it's solid. Nobody's shaking that foundation. And if CJ came back, he wouldn't be walking into the same team he left. He'd be walking into a brotherhood that has evolved, matured, and proven itself. A team with Super Bowl aspirations. But the question is, does CJ still fit that picture? Does he still have the hunger to fight for something bigger than his own spotlight? That's what Dan Campbell and Brad Holmes would have to figure out. Because in this version of Detroit, there's no room for me first football. Every guy on that field plays for the man next to him, and if you can't buy into that, you don't belong here. It's that simple. And maybe that's exactly the challenge CJ needs. A final chance to prove that the fire inside him can still burn the right way. A chance to show that he's learned from everything, the injuries, the trades, the cuts. Because deep down, you know he loves the game. You know he plays with passion. The question is whether he can channel that passion into something productive, something that helps the team rather than distracts it.